Hello Year 6, welcome to your science video lesson for this week. Today we're thinking all about the iceberg that famously sank the Titanic on the 14th of April 1912 in the North Atlantic Ocean. Icebergs are formed when large chunks break off from glaciers. You can see in the video footage here this happening in slow motion. Huge chunks carve from the side of a glacier and float in the sea. They create what looks like rather epic ice structures. But just think, whatever we can see above the surface, just how much iceberg is actually below the surface that isn't visible to our eye. For the science experiment today, you are going to need a bowl, you're going to need some room temperature water, you're going to need a balloon, and you're going to need a thermometer to take the temperature at regular intervals. But if you don't have any of those things at home, then you're more than welcome to just watch this video and you can use the data that Mr. Gooding will give you from this experiment to interpret the results for yourself. So to start off with, we filled a bowl with water, left it to go to room temperature, which was 19 degrees. Previously, we filled a balloon with water and put it in the freezer so that our iceberg was completely solid. And then all that you need to do is cut your iceberg free of the balloon and you will be ready to go to start observing how icebergs react in the water, how they behave, what they look like, how they affect the sea temperature around them, and any other observations that you can make as they're melting. How long does it take to melt? And what the ice actually looks like. Is it translucent? Is it shiny? Are there any cracks in the iceberg? Now, if you don't have your own iceberg to test at home, you'll be able to see from the video here just what it looks like. You can see quite a large crack already through it, and it's kind of an opaque colour. Place your iceberg into the room temperature water and be ready to take your first measurement after 1 minute. So you're also going to need a stopwatch. But fortunately for you, I took these measurements as I worked, so you'll be able to work with my data if you aren't able to do this at home. Notice just how much of the iceberg is left above the surface and just how much is below. You can try to estimate that in percentage. We could hear very, very tiny cracks that I wasn't able to pick up as I filmed as the iceberg went into the room temperature water to start off with. From here, I've sped up the video, but I took the temperature every 1 minute to see how the sea temperature around the iceberg would be affected, how quickly the temperature of the water would drop, and you'll see that data on Mr. Gooding's worksheet for you this week. Just to make sure that I was being especially fair in the test, I did use 2 different thermometers to make sure that I was being accurate, because it's good as a scientist to make sure that your results are fair and that they are right. You don't want them to be incorrect at any point. And in total, it took over 4 hours for the iceberg to melt completely, which I'm just showing you here in fully sped up video so you can see how the iceberg behaved. It actually went completely flat on the top, which was interesting. I kept picking it up just ever so slightly out of the water so that I could see it. There was still a lot of iceberg underneath the water, whereas the top that it was in the air seemed to melt far more quickly. When you look at the Google Drive this week, you'll find the science investigation sheet that Mr. Gooding has put together to take you through what you need to do for this week's experiment. Now, if you're using the data from the experiment that I've just shown you, here it all is on the sheet for you. What you're going to be asked to do first is, can you create a line graph for this data, or for the data that you've gathered by doing the experiment for yourself? There's a graph checklist to remind you what to do when you're setting out a line graph. There's some squared paper here on the sheet for you as well if you're able to print it out, but don't worry if you're not. You can do your line graph on any piece of paper. You'll just need a ruler to be able to do that. There's a series of questions to take you through interpreting the data, and some sentence openers to help you really think scientifically about your answer. You want to make sure that you're giving your answer in full sentences and that you're really thinking about the evidence from the experiment that backs up what you're saying. Lots of the questions that we've asked you here have been considered as we've watched the video, so you should have already thought about them a little bit, but if you need to, you can always go back and watch the video again and really look at how that iceberg behaves. Good luck with your science learning for this week.